It's time to review who the top 10 pitchers are in baseball rest of season. Kind of. See, I think it's pretty well known who the top 10 or 20 names are. I'll even throw up some projections right here. It's all the guys you would think, some combination of these guys at least. So I'm going to take this video in a slightly different direction. Who are the top 10 most interesting pitchers rest of season? Now, how do you define interesting? Well, I'll try to do that in each 1 or 1.5 minute blurb that I spend on each of these guys. Let's do it. I'm cheating a bit with my first guy. I'm going Tarik Skubal, who was number 1 on the rest of season projection that I showed a bit ago. The interesting thing about him is that if he posts another 8 innings of about a 2.80 ERA, he will eclipse 7 Fangraphs WAR, and that will be the first 7+ WAR pitcher season that we've had in MLB since 2021, when both Zach Wheeler and Corbin Burnes posted 7 Fangraphs WAR. So you're literally watching one of the best pitching seasons we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. I didn't think a lot of people believed he would get better, but he did 2 things that jump out to me. Number 1, he pulled down his four-seam usage to right-handed hitters, and he pushed up his sinker usage. And the sinker's weird because he throws this thing kind of at right-handed hitters, and it leaks back over the zone and gets called strike. So it has high zone, low swing, which is a weird combination for a pitch overall. You generally expect sinkers that have drop to work to opposite-handed hitters. Skubal's is more like a true 2-seam fastball. It's like a runner 2-seam, but it works because he's throwing 97 and he has fantastic command. You generally just don't see that. I don't think this is something a lot of guys can try, to throw this oppo-handed 2-seamer as a lefty, but he executes it, I think, better than anybody in baseball, and he pushed the usage of that pitch this year, and it's working. And he's also cutting his 4-seam fastball a lot more. Spin efficiency's down 95% to 91%. It has more carry with that cut and less arm side movement. Zone misses up from about 23% to 31%. Man, he is fantastic. He's one of my favorite pitchers to watch in all of Major League Baseball. And one of my favorite things is that we now have a sponsor for this video, and hopefully videos going forward. I'm proud to say this video is sponsored by Huel, and I'm a huge fan of them, mainly because over the last 2 to 3 years, what I would do every morning is kind of throw water, fruit, peanut butter, random things into a blender and make a smoothie in the morning. And now what I've started to do is switch to Huel's Black Edition meal powder. It's a considerably easier process from a time standpoint. It's actually a full meal. Most important for me is that it helps me hit my protein goal in a given day. So if you put 2 scoops in with water, it's about 40 grams of protein, and it provides a bunch of other stuff as well. That's essential protein for me when I'm trying to build some mass in the gym. I'm a tall guy, I'm big, and I need to eat a lot of high quality calories to grow. And I will say, on the road for work, like I was about a week ago for Major League Baseball's MLB draft coverage with MLB Network, it's literally impossible to find high quality protein sources quick, to not go into a deficit and lose my progress in the gym. And Huel's Black Edition meal powder was a huge help. If you're interested in checking out Huel, which I actually have right here, the shake that you just saw me make this morning, actually, as well as the actual powder itself, you can check out my code. It's Lance15. There's a link in the video description. I encourage you to check that out. I also pinned a comment as well. There's also a QR code, which you can check out if you want to learn more about Huel. Again, that gets you 15% off, minimum order of about $75, and it's worth it. I really enjoy it. I'm crushing the vanilla Black Edition right now, and it's solid. It has become my morning shake, which I never thought I would replace, but Huel stepped in and filled that gap, so to speak, in my life. Dylan Cease is interesting because he's in a contract year and his results haven't been that good. He's got a 4.5+ ERA right now. And of course, you look at the underlying ERA indicators, basically every single one of them thinks he's about a run lower than he is going forward. So they think he's like a 3.5 ERA guy rest of season. And I get it. He's unlucky from a BABIP standpoint. You kind of just expect this to regress overall. His right-handed hitter results are pretty identical to 2024. Checks that box. Missing more lefty bats as well. That's another big check, partially why his K rate overall is up. But he's allowed a higher barrel rate to left-handed hitters. This jumped from about 8% to 14%. League average is right around 9%. And to me, I could see this is mainly just due to his slider. He's just allowing more damage on it when it's left up in the zone. I'll show you the damage plot right here in terms of where it succeeds versus where it doesn't. And you can see the attempts to figure out something to left-handed hitters. He's played with a cutter. He's kind of thrown these weird changeups that I still just don't believe how he's not throwing a harder changeup. Maybe the team he goes to this offseason will figure that out finally for him. There's nothing dramatically concerning here to me, but I wonder whether he struggles down the stretch if that impacts his offseason contract and what he gets. Corbin Burnes got 6 for $210 this offseason, obviously down with Tommy John, $33 million a year. Fried got 8 for $218. It was right around, I think, $28 million a year or so. Cease, to me, is probably going to get around 30 AAV, $30 million AAV. And I think he's worth it. I just think if you're a team that's putting a, close to $200 million contract on the table for him, you kind of want to see him do it down the stretch here and into the postseason. All right, we're going off the radar for number 3. Quinn Priester, really fun one. He has a sub 3.5 ERA this season. Peripherals that all think everything checks out. He was with the Red Sox to start the season, so they acquired him from the Pirates at last year's trade deadline. And when they acquired him, they basically took his fastball and said, that's not a good pitch, throw this cutter. So he slowly introduced that offering. He comes into this year, and then early April, he gets traded to the Brewers. The Brewers basically took that cutter and pushed the usage up. So since June, he's been throwing that cutter that Boston introduced about 20% of the time. Since June, he's got a 2.45 ERA. This cutter is 92 miles per hour, 12 inches vert, 1-inch glove side. A little more lift than a usual cutter. It's probably a byproduct of how hard he's throwing it. Average cutter's like 91. Probably about 8 or 9 inches of vertical break. And that cutter to left-handed hitters hasn't allowed a fly ball since June, which to me is crazy. He elevates it a lot. He also comes inside. He's playing this pretty funky game to lefties where he's mixing multiple fastballs, and it's working. He's going sinker to lefties as well. That's a theme, I guess, in this video of throwing oppo-handed sinkers and having them work. 30% strikeout minus walk since June. Really interesting arm because with the Brewers, you have Miz and Woodruff looking fantastic, and then this guy comes out of nowhere and now looks like a 3 or a 4, and I'd project him as that going forward. They go from looking like a team that needs another arm to one that can probably trade Freddie Peralta and still run the table in the National League. And Priester, I'm partially surprised the Red Sox gave up on him as early as they did. He looks like a stud. I don't think he's going to be a 30K minus walk guy going forward, but hat tip to the Brewers for pushing what the Red Sox introduced. Slade Cecconi is a name that I brought up in an off-season video because I was curious to see what the Guardians would do with him. And boy, do I look smart for doing that because he has a sub 3.5 ERA since June. He represents a bygone era of pitching development to me. And what I mean by that is that in the past, there was probably like 6 or 8 teams in Major League Baseball you could poach pitching talent from, make dramatic changes to, and all of a sudden this guy's like fantastic. And the other team's going, man, I guess we just can't do that. And 4 of those teams have basically completely turned over front office or pitching staff. The Marlins, the Athletics, the D-backs, applicable to Slade Cecconi here, and the Nationals. You could have probably poached from those 4 teams. I don't think you can anymore. Maybe the Guardians got the last piece of this. They got 5 years of control on Slade Cecconi for an expiring Josh Naylor. You want to talk about a slam dunk trade? The hardest thing to do in baseball is to create controllable pitching talent. The Guardians gave up a guy they probably weren't going to re-sign and got back Slade Cecconi, who they turned into a beast. I have 30 seconds to rip through everything they changed because it's a lot. 5 things. Slots up. His arm angle's up about 4 degrees from 36% to 40%. Number 2, this slot change affected his fastball shape. Arm side run on his fastball went down 4 inches and he picked up 2 inches of vert. The usage also went down from 55% to about 40%. Number 3, he's got a new changeup shape. Using it less as well, basically never right anymore. He's only a breaking ball guy to righties. Not sure if this is a byproduct of the slot change or a new grip. Couldn't really find it, but it's new. Number 4, more curveball and slider to lefties. This gets at the point that there's less changeup overall in his mix. Number 5, way less four seam to righties as well. 54% down to 38%, and they introduced a new sinker, which is right around 20%. Predictions are bearish here. I think he's like a 4.4 ERA guy rest of the season. I'm going to take the under on that. I think he's more like a flat 4 guy, better than league average. I really like what they did. I get the fastballs aren't generating swing miss, but he's got exceptional command and execution. It's going to work, and the D-backs are probably going to be haunted by this for a very long time. All right, you can see that I'm terrible at keeping myself to about a minute and a half. I think I'm blowing over on all of these, but I guess if you're watching this deep into this video, then you don't mind the extra content. So I literally have a stopwatch going here. I'm timing myself, and I'm terrible at keeping myself on time. Too much to say, including number 5. Whoever the Cubs acquires is the 5th most interesting pitcher in baseball. And I say this because they're a top 3 team in baseball. You could argue maybe one of the best teams in baseball. Projections have them squarely top 3 or 4. They probably have a bottom half, if not bottom 10, projected rotation from a WAR standpoint. And when you layer in the risk element there, I think you could push it down to bottom 5. I say this because Matthew Boyd is exceptional. He's already thrown 110 innings. It's not August. He hasn't thrown over 80 innings since 2019. Cade Horton, off a shoulder injury, subscap injury last year, is not throwing 5 or 6 innings deep into October. Shoti Managa's splitter isn't missing any bats right now. But it's honestly good that he was injured, I think, because you're not going to blow over his workload total if this team makes a deep October run. Whoever they acquire is going to be the most interesting pitcher. And I say that because they're connected to like Sandy, Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. Kelly's the name that you probably don't have to adjust anything to. So maybe that's good, high floor, etc. But Gallen, Sandy, Cabrera are all names that you have to make adjustments to, I think, if you acquire them specifically. What the Cubs do on that, I will be fascinated to see. Gallen in particular already started throwing a sinker. Somebody's got to figure out his slider cutter. This thing has just not been good for a couple of years. Cuts his fastball. How many guys cut their fastball and have like a neutral to below average slider cutter thing. I get a lot of guys morph this pitch around, but the fact that Gallen hasn't figured this out partially blows my mind. So I guess this has turned into Gallen being one of the most interesting pitchers going forward. But anyways, the Cubs need to acquire a pitcher. Whoever it is will be one of the most interesting pitchers rest of the season. The American League wildcard's close. The Mariners have a good offense, and their pitching has run into injuries. Of course, that's just how life works for Mariners fans. George Kirby is the most interesting name here. His arm angle fell from last year to this year after missing the beginning of the season with some arm trouble, 7 degrees. Now, I mentioned it earlier, I think, but the standard deviation on a start-to-start basis with arm angle is right around 3 degrees. So when you push over 4 degrees, and double that, almost to 7 degrees now with George Kirby, it's a substantial change, and we could see it impacting the four-seam shape specifically. Vertical break here is down 3 inches. His release height's also way down from 6 feet to 5.6 feet. Fangraphs Stuff Plus is not a fan of this four-seamer anymore. It went from 103, which is an above-average four-seamer, to 89, which is a below-average four-seamer. To righties, as a result, what he's done is just throw a bunch of sinkers. He hasn't really had too many issues because the sinker works. To lefties, he hasn't been that sharp, but it's a weird reason why, because the four seam's actually been okay. What he's doing is kind of just jamming the four seam in the sinker up into left-handed hitters. My question here is what he does with the secondary. So as a result of the slot dropping, the sweepers picked up a lot of lateral, and he shortened that pitch over time where it got really good as this like kind of downer tight baby sweeper pitch. Now it's like a full-on sweeper. I don't think he should be throwing that oppo-handed to lefty, so I wonder whether he starts to push more splitter. It's just weird. We don't often see, I think, aces change this much overall. I think it's I'm going to talk about a guy in a sec who changed and evolved subtly, but a slot drop like this is pretty substantial for Kirby. I wonder whether he just doesn't really lock in and become as good, but maybe I'm underrating the fact that he's such a good command artist. It doesn't really matter where the shapes are. He's going to put him in the spots he needs. Something to watch, but I'm not totally sold the secondaries are great, and I think he's important to the Mariners' postseason run. Ryan Pepiot's tracking for a 2+ WAR season, career high innings total, and he added a sinker. He hits on a growing trend of high efficiency fastball guys, so guys who get behind their fastball really nicely, adding sinkers, when historically we've thought as an industry that guy doesn't need a sinker. It's not a good pitch, it's a dead zone pitch, etc. Therefore, just throw the four-seam fastball in different spots. But we're seeing him, Chris Paddock, I mentioned Zach Gallen, not a totally efficient fastball guy, but also Taj Bradley on the same team here, obviously the Rays, adding these two-seam fastballs to help, I think, pull down their four-seam fastball usage against a specific hitter for these guys, right, so right-handed hitters specifically, gives them something inner third. Even if it's a dead zone pitch, if you could just roughly command it on the inner third of the plate, it's probably not going to miss bats, but I don't think it's going to allow a lot of damage, and maybe it allows that pitcher to go back to the four-seam fastball in more deep count situations where they believe, they could get whiff with it, etc. Overall, makes them more diverse in those two-strike scenarios that are really important for pitchers overall. Pepiot specifically, K-minus walk, right-handed hitters is up from 9% to 13% since he's added to this sinker, so we're seeing some effects of adding this pitch overall. It's an interesting trend. I think we're maxed out on like the optimized stuff point with starting pitchers for most organizations, especially really good ones like this, to the point where we're now starting to add pitches that maybe pull down your aggregate stuff plus score, but help from an approach standpoint and a longevity standpoint within a given game more. And I think Pepiot is a really good example of that with this sinker. Twins are in kind of a weird spot as a team. They might be sold, they're under 500, and they have a top 10 pitcher, arguably, in baseball in Joe Ryan, who's pacing for the best season of his career, 180 innings, sub-3 ERAs in play for him, 2 more years of control left. The rumors are not going away. They're going to have to be blown away by an offer to trade him, but this is going to permeate into the offseason and next deadline as well if the Twins don't bounce back overall. He's made some changes too, but the primary reason he's good is this flat approach four-seam fastball. This is like modern baseball to a T, right? Give me that vertical break, carry fastball, sinker, move the ball around from the early 2000s. Now it's like, we understand how important approach angles are specifically on four-seam fastballs. I don't actually care if you carry the ball well. I care if you have a low slot and can carry it kind of okay. That's where Joe Ryan comes in. Negative 3.65 vertical approach angles, third lowest in Major League Baseball among qualified starting pitchers. Brian Woon, Logan Webb, the other one with the 3 flattest overall. 4.8 release height. It's a foot lower than average. It's 93.5. It plays up. It chews at the top of the zone. But his best non-fastball last season was his changeup. This season, he's progressively backed off the changeup to both left-handed hitters and right-handed hitters. My best guess as to why is that it got clipped 3 times in 2 strike counts over the course of like 3-4 starts, it looks. And I imagine a pitcher like that just loses confidence in the offering. and he moved off it. So he's got a new curveball that he's throwing in 2-strike counts. I actually really like that he's throwing it in 2-strike counts and not early count situations. It's around 10% of the time in those 2K situations. The shape looks good. You know, he's retooling to stay on top. I mentioned earlier about like overhauls on a couple guys like Cecconi, etc. But I love when a pitcher who's very good is able to kind of morph into something subtly different but still maintain the same results. We've seen this with Zach Wheeler over and over and over. Basically every season he does something different, adds something, takes away something, gets better. We're seeing it with Joe Ryan. Fun question for you. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Joe Ryan, or Spencer Strider rest of the season? Who's the better pitcher? I'm taking Joe Ryan. Next guy is Brandon Pfaadt. Not Brandon Pfaadt, which I found out about a month and a half ago that I've been saying his name wrong for the entirety of my life. Anyways, before this season, a few people asked me whether I was in on him. My response was something along the lines of, I need to see something versus left-handed hitters that's more interesting than what he's doing. I didn't really think anything was working. The sinker doesn't have enough drop to work versus lefties, you know, the four seam's not that great. And what we got for 3 months was no change and a 7.25 ERA in May and June. Not particularly great. And then we get a huge, massive overhaul. Running theory that I've had, if you've listened to other videos of mine, you've probably heard this. Bad pitchers tend to make adjustments. And I actually really like looking at terrible pitchers and seeing eventually that they will get better because they can't sustain a 40-man spot with a 7 ERA. And Pfaadt has done that. So forcing fastball to lefties. Look at this cliff. This isn't even to lefties. This is just overall. But lefties in particular, it's fallen off a ton. What he did was added a cutter since June 28th. He's thrown it about 28-30% of the time versus lefties. It's actually his primary pitch. Not missing bats. Contact quality looks good. It's kind of like an average pitch. 90 miles per hour, 7 inches of vert, 2 inches glove side movement. A little bit slower than average, but the glove side on it's good overall. No arm angle change here, but his slot did drop. His release height went from like 5.9 to 5.5 feet. So perhaps like a lower body adjustment in terms of how he was setting up or striding through that kind of played around with his release height, but kept his arm the same. He's interesting because, again, I mentioned that the D-backs are in the spot where it seems like Gallen and Kelly are going, and I don't think it's impossible to assume that they still make a playoff run, especially if they just keep one of those guys. Say like Gallen stays, Kelly goes, or Kelly stays, Gallen goes. Pfaadt is the name that will have to step up and be good if they're going to make a run into the postseason. I think they might be like a soft sell team, but maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm expecting them and the Guardians and some of these other teams to make runs. I just think 3 games out of a wild card or so is not a lot to climb. Anything can happen in the final 2 months. Brandon Pfaadt, a lot of pressure on him to be good. Let's finish things off with the reliever. I was thinking Griffin Jax, who has the lowest xFIP in baseball among relievers by like 0.5 runs, which is a ton. I also thought of Tanner Scott, who's having a very weird year for the Dodgers. I wonder if that forces them to pick up another reliever, and he just got injured, so yeah, they're probably going to add another reliever. I went David Bednar, who in 33 innings this year is a top 15 reliever in terms of Fangraphs WAR. It's kind of surprising because he was demoted at the beginning of the year. He got demolished last year. So what changed here? It's a mixed change overall, which I'll throw up on screen. He's not throwing the splitter as much to lefties and righties, so he's pulled back on that. And instead, he's throwing this kind of like weird loopy curveball. 77 miles per hour. It's 20 miles per hour off his four-seam fastball. The shape is like kind of boring. I'm not entirely sure what the premise is here from this pitch being the one that he wants to throw this much. You know, you watch it and it's like you're waiting for it to get to the plate. He's trying to just throw off timing. To me, it feels a little gimmicky because I'm not entirely sure how he's not throwing like an 83 mile per hour curveball. He just needs more intent on the pitch would be my guess from like a stuff standpoint, which is making him better. And I know I talked about going away from like just maximizing stuff, but with relievers, a lot of the time, I think that's kind of all you need to do. So my bet is that I don't think he's going to be like a clutch reliever for a team in the postseason. I'm just a little bit concerned because the lefty stuff in particular doesn't look great from an underlying data standpoint, especially on the contact quality side. I'm worried he gives up like a big postseason homer if he gets traded to a competitor. Obviously, the Pirates are not making the postseason. Weird to me. I wouldn't acquire him being confident he's a closer. I would acquire him in a part of a larger, maybe bullpen revamp as like a 7th or 8th inning guy. Just not convinced this curveball is the way out of him being a good reliever, especially when in 22 and 23, he was very good using the splitter a ton. So I guess I'm just not a David Bednar guy. I'm curious to see who acquires him. All right, that's all I got for this video, but I got to shout out you guys, the viewers, because it's awesome that I was actually able to get a sponsor for this video, and I'm still kind of stunned by it. Like, it's just something I never thought a couple years ago when I was doing this stuff. But primary reason this channel exists is because it allows me to think through topics, and I think by teaching, I learn. And I use a lot of this stuff in other capacities, whether it be on air or, you know, doing sideline for Marquee, etc., MLB Network. Like, there's transitive effects on all this stuff. It all kind of matters. So if you've been hanging around and encouraging me to make stuff and have actually been hanging around to the end of these videos, I hat tip to you. I really appreciate your viewership and everything, and it means a lot. Super cool that I was able to get a sponsor. I like still am kind of shocked by it, but shout out to Huel and shout out to you. Appreciate the 16,000 subs or so we're up to now. It's kind of wild. Anyways, I'll see you in another week. Deadline coming up. Let me know also too if you're actually at the end of this video now, and you've definitely the attrition on the last 30 seconds is massive. But if you have a picture that you find most interesting, drop it in the comments. So if you're a real ball knower, you would have watched to the 20 whatever 5-minute mark this is in this video and seen that I did bury a call to action in here. It's just at the end. Usually I do these in the middle. Anyways, thanks for watching.